So this is a really terrifying and sad video. It's a graphic video, so I'm giving you a warning beforehand. Afghans are starving due to U.S. sanctions. CNN, to their credit, actually did a really good report on it. Take a look.
The United Nations says that Afghanistan is now on the brink of, quote, a humanitarian catastrophe, and 1 million Afghan children are at risk of dying from hunger, while the country grapples with the aftermath of the chaotic U.S. exit, an historic drought, and economic collapse. As CNN's Anna Coren reports, Afghanistan is also bracing for a brutal winter ahead. We do want to warn viewers, some of the images in this story may be difficult to watch.
A little girl sobs, gently rubbing her ears, in a feeble attempt to ease the pain tormenting her body. She doesn't have the energy to cry the way other sick children do. Camilla is exhausted as she lies in a hospital bed in Kandahar, southern Afghanistan, slowly starving to death. The 2.5-year-old weighs just over 5 kilograms, 11 pounds, about a third of what a normal toddler her age should. Her mother is sick and we are poor people, explains Camilla's grandmother. She tried to breastfeed but had no milk to give. Camilla, now one of at least 1 million Afghan children under the age of 5 at risk of dying from starvation. For months, the UN has been sounding the alarm, warning that Afghanistan was on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe. The Taliban takeover on the 15th of August saw international funds immediately dry up, triggering an economic collapse in an already impoverished country, where foreign aid represented 43% of the country's GDP and 75% of government spending, according to the World Bank. But as the US withholds billions of dollars in Afghan reserves and sanctions are imposed on the Taliban government, the West's attempts to force fundamental change within the group are hurting the Afghan people. And with the country in the grips of winter, facing one of the worst droughts in decades, the most vulnerable are paying the price. In this hospital in Ghor province in northwestern Afghanistan, up to 100 mothers and children turn up each day with varying cases of malnutrition. Dr. Fazila Haq Fajad has been working here for the past 6 years and has never seen this level of desperation.
Almost 70% of the cases are severe, and this is in the Sisi. Imagine how bad the districts are. If nobody pays attention, it's going to get much worse. We are in a disaster.
One of his patients receiving treatment is Razia. This is her third visit to hospital in 8 months. Her skeletal frame, a clear sign this child, who's just a few months away from turning 3, is not getting better.
So this is because of U.S. sanctions. After the Taliban took over, they froze Afghanistan's assets. Now, why wouldn't the U.S. lift the sanctions and allow this crisis to be abated? The answer is very simple. Joe Biden does not want to give the Republicans an optics victory, where they turn around and say, Joe Biden gave the Taliban billions of dollars, because that's exactly how Republicans would frame it. They would say, Joe Biden gives the Taliban billions of dollars. Joe Biden knows that. He doesn't want to give them that optics victory, so he would rather starve the civilians of Afghanistan. Financial Times has a piece out today. Dire projections show Afghanistan faces highest ever recorded hunger crisis. Highest ever recorded. 98% of Afghans already don't have enough food. Banking, health, education, water systems collapsing. You ready for this next one? I hope you're sitting down for this one. 1 million children are at risk of dying from hunger. 1 million dying from hunger. This is a war crime. Look, you got to keep it real. This is actually even worse than the war. The civilian death toll can be way, way worse than the war itself. So he pulled out. I gave him credit when he pulled out of Afghanistan militarily. But now, the dynamic has shifted. He's absolutely starving the civilians in Afghanistan to avoid giving the Republicans an optics victory. And it is completely and utterly unacceptable and illegal, and it's a war crime. And he should be brought up in charges at The Hague. He should immediately lift these sanctions. Immediately. The war's over. The Taliban won. They're not going to attack the U.S. They never attacked the U.S. to begin with. It was Al-Qaeda who did it. You got to allow them to access their assets. You got to lift the sanctions. There's no way around it, man. There's no way out of it. And by the way, to the media, so CNN gets credit for doing this segment. There were a number of other hosts on CNN like Jake Tapper. And there were MSNBC hosts, Fox News hosts. They were melting down over Biden. Oh my God, pulling out of Afghanistan. What about the civilians? What about the people? They're going to be under repressive Taliban rule. We care so much. We have bleeding hearts for the innocents in Afghanistan. Where are you now? There was sustained outrage coverage for what, 2 weeks straight on Afghanistan? Where are you now when the crisis is way worse? It's way worse than it was before. It's way worse than even the war that happened. Whether it's the war or the Taliban takeover or whatever, it's nothing in comparison to what's happening right this second with babies starving, and you have nothing to say about it because you don't actually care about the people of Afghanistan at all. You were doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex and the Pentagon and your sources, and you're a stenographer to the Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, the CIA. When they told you, jump, you said how high. When they said be outraged, you said, yes, sir. And so they acted like pulling out of Afghanistan. Oh my God, this is the biggest crime in history. The war itself wasn't a huge crime. The war itself was maybe a mistake. But pulling out is the biggest crime in history. That's the problem. Let's melt down and pretend like we care about civilians. Well, now there's a test of your character and your honesty. Because what's happening right now is way worse. And none of you are saying anything, which shows you how biased and disgusting U.S. media is and corporate media is. They are miserable failures. They're not actually looking at evidence and saying, where's there a real crisis around the world? Let's talk about that and make that scandalous. No, that's not how they make their decisions. It's not based on what is objectively the correct thing to cover and what is objectively correct to have moral and ethical outrage over. They don't do that. If that was the case, they would still be screaming about how we're arming Saudi Arabia as they committed genocide in Yemen. These outlets have little to nothing to say about Yemen and Afghanistan when these are the worst crises in the world right now. But we are actively facilitating it so they don't cover it, which means they are state propagandists. Corporate media functions as beholden to the powerful in the U.S., and it's very clear. They'll bitch and whine and moan and talk about state media in regards to Iran or the official baddie countries. What they don't tell you is they're just as bad, if not worse. Look at what they're doing here. Nothing to say about 98% starving in Afghanistan because of our sanctions. Nothing to say about it. Well, you guys know where to come, where I'll try to be honest and tell you the truth and cover the things that are important. You come here for that. And it's a goddamn shame. I would much rather have corporate media do their job right than be a new media outlet where we're one of the few even talking about this. It's a crime that you have to come to a random loudmouth YouTuber like myself to get real news. But that's the reality. This is even worse than the war itself. And the number of deaths could far surpass the war itself. And it's not even being mentioned by any of the people who feigned their outrage like Jake Tapper. Absolutely pathetic. Biden, lift those sanctions right this second. You already have blood on your hands, but there's going to be a fucking swimming pool of blood that you're diving head first into unless you do the right thing.